Now, some news in relation to the Garda side of things. Garda Síochána are participating in the 2020 Pride of Place Award ceremony, and that takes place on Saturday, the 21st of November at 7 p.m, and that's hosted by Marty Morrissey. The Sligo Leitrim Divisional Protection Services Unit was established, offering a service to investigate specialised crimes such as sexual crimes and child abuse. The Sligo Leitrim Division has 6 specially trained officers providing expert assistance to victims. There's now a unit in all divisions. And I came across a few photographs on Twitter only last week, some lovely photos of Garda scenes on a particular Twitter page from Jamie Ryan in Tipperary. The photographs are titled Today's View from the Office and Hold Firm. They're excellent shots by Garda Jamie Ryan in Care in Tipperary. And I see he also made the UK Cop Humour page too. So give him a follow. It's his Twitter handle is It's Jamie Ryan. So joining me now is Antoinette Cunningham, who's General Secretary of the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors. Antoinette, thanks very much indeed for your time for joining us. I suppose in relation to COVID, Antoinette, can you give us an outline of the pressures and stresses experienced by members in the force in recent months due to COVID-19 and the public compliance?
Yeah, Declan, good morning. And I suppose the biggest change for us in terms of policing the COVID pandemic was in March of this year. We heard basically overnight that our roster was going to change and that members would be moved from their traditional 10-hour shifts of 6 days on and 4 days off onto 12-hour shifts with 4 days on and 4 days off. So obviously that's a huge change to be working a constant cycle of 12 hours. And of course, at the start, nobody could have anticipated that almost 8 months on, that we're now still working that shift and indeed are due to work it until March next year, which effectively for members of Garda Síochána means that they'll be working the emergency COVID roster for a period of 1 year at that stage. And I have to be complimentary, Declan, of all the guards and especially my own members in AGSI of how they've transitioned into that and the levels of cooperation they've had with policing the pandemic, because that's what we've got from members of my own association all the way through is just wholehearted cooperation.
Absolutely, and I suppose it did come in overnight, so there's huge change logistically and operationally as well. And there's been good engagement as well from the public in terms of the Garda activities, Antoinette.
Yeah, I think, one thing that really came out of this crisis is the relationship between the guards and members of the public and how positive that has been. And it has allowed us, in a sense, to get back to the grassroots, to get back into our communities. And, that is because there was, of course, with a roster change from 5 shifts back to 4, it meant you had additional personnel. There was additional forms of transport provided by the state and by the Garda organisation to allow us to do that. And it has fostered and nurtured the relationship between us and our communities, and that is to be hailed as a success of this crisis.
Now, obviously, it's not all good in the garden, as the man says. I suppose in terms of COVID, there's been the introduction of spit hoods for members. That hasn't gone down too well in the public eye, has it?
Well, I suppose the anti-spit guard, as it's called officially within the Garda organisation, Declan, and I think this is sometimes what gets missed with this. This is an additional layer of PPE, and it was introduced primarily because we saw an increased number of people who deliberately spat or coughed both saliva or blood into the faces of members of Garda Síochána while claiming to have COVID. So sometimes I think people think the anti-spit guard was introduced in breach of some human rights issues or whatever. That's not the case. It was introduced as an additional layer of PPE. And I think what people don't realise is you cannot use an anti-spit guard on a member of the public unless you have been trained in it, first of all, unless you have completed the training course, unless you're an authorised user of an anti-spit guard. You have to adhere to the policy contained in the use of the anti-spit guard. And of course, you have to be proportionate, it has to be necessary, you have to be compliant with the law and with human rights obligations. So it's very, very strict use. But don't forget the reason it was brought in. It's because members were being deliberately assaulted by people who claim to have COVID, who were deliberately spitting blood and saliva into their faces. And I think the trauma of that, if you're deliberately coughed or spat at, particularly if your blood is spat into your face, the psychological effect of a member in relation to thinking about that type of an assault can run very deep with them, and I don't think that should be overlooked.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Is it the same sort of protocol, Antoinette, in terms of the Garda using the pepper spray or something, that it's only needed if necessary? Is it a very cumbersome thing to actually put on the anti-spit guards, or?
All personal protection equipment and all stuff, including incapacitation spray, all follow the use of force policy. And the guards obviously operate under a graduated response. So it's always an escalation use of any type of PPE equipment. So it's never just instantaneous use. All of the other methods are used before finally resorting to the use of any type of PPE or incapacitation spray. So it's really no different than that, Declan.
Okay, I suppose finally, Antoinette, in terms of the Garda Síochána's public attitude survey, it showed that 80% of those surveyed were happy with the Garda service to the local community, and trust within the Guards rose from 90 to 91% from the last report, while 73% of people said that Garda Síochána is community-based, friendly and helpful. I suppose my question is, in terms of your role as General Secretary of the AGSI, are the members themselves happy with the organisation in terms of the backup and support and Garda numbers? Or are there any concerns in terms of the police service being more so focused on community policing rather than tactical?
Yeah, well, you'll have seen, or may have seen, Declan, recently, there was a major wellness survey carried out within the organisation. It was actually carried out almost a year ago, which is pre-COVID, I have to say that. And it did find that, and even the Commissioner himself was quoted as saying that Garda Síochána is not a normal job with normal stresses. And I suppose the survey was significant in one of its findings, is that it did say that there are a large number of Gardaí who experience trauma and high levels of stress in the course of their duty. And that is very concerning. And I suppose for us as the first line supervisors and middle rank in Garda Síochána, one heartening thing that we did find in it was that 70% of Garda personnel did say they would feel comfortable talking to a supervisor about something that they were having difficulty with. So within it, you have heartening things, but the survey widely acknowledged that the Guards need to do more to manage the stress and traumatic incidents that members can occur within the organisation itself.
And I presume there is good networks between the AGSI and indeed the GRA in terms of the Commissioner and his staff in terms of making better the works of the Gardaí on the front line.
Yeah, well, I suppose we have a wellness forum established now within the job, and the staff representative associations have a consultative process in that with the Chief Medical Officer. So that's certainly to be welcomed. But the survey clearly indicates more needs to be done, and certainly that's part of what we'll continue to advocate to do for our members.
Okay, Antoinette Cunningham, General Secretary of the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Declan.